But it's kind of.
There's no pictures, that's why
That's why I'm doing.
You gotta realize with all that experience.
It's not pictures.
Yeah, right. It's like going to a restaurant ordering.
We're gonna get started here now that it's 6 o'clock. We're gonna get started here, Andrea.
Okay,
Sorry. We know if Thomas is.
I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay.
Was he maybe part of the meeting that was going on over in Newcastle?
Oh, maybe at the fire meetings.
Yeah, I think his truck was there.
Oh, right, he said, that's right, he did say, he would be here, but he was gonna finish up that. That's fine.
Perfect.
okay.
Well, we can get into calling the meeting to order. Down one. Appreciate all the public being here. If you haven't had a chance on the way out, if you want to sign in on the way out, you're welcome to do so. And there were some agendas up there. Folks want to see what's on the agenda for tonight. There's some copies up there.
John up front, Andy?
Up on the podium.
Just
John
right
Papple's
here.
up.
Yeah.
Excellent. With that,
Anybody else?
let's go through the first thing we want to try and establish tonight is we're just kind of coming back and kind of grounding ourselves as we meet with Kevin's drafted up some proposed ground rules for the committee working through this process. I don't know if folks had a chance to review that.
Yeah, we got a chance to look them over, so they look pretty,
They look good to me.
pretty standard, pretty comprehensive for
Are we gonna
Yeah.
put them up first?
keeping through some order through the meetings here, yeah.
Perfect.
The intent was to delay who is the chair of the committee. Yeah, when we're meeting, depending on where we're meeting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. When you're in your house, you're in this house, it's handy, yeah. Yeah, I didn't see anything that jumped out that any changes or anything. It was pretty, like you covered everything, covered. Yeah, and mostly my intent was, this is mostly driven by, I thought it'd be pretty not well attended by the public, so it's wonderful to see this much public here. What I would like to say is that I still want to have the committee actually get through the agenda. Yeah, and unfortunately, at our last meeting, we weren't able to do so. I just want to create, an understanding and appreciation of the public's here, but set a time specifically for when public comment can be made. And as the chair, you can look at it or say, let's have that at the beginning of the meeting, let's have that towards the end of the meeting, but allow us to try to get through the agenda. If you have concerns or comments, please, right there.
I created this little
Hey, look at that.
parking lot type thing, so there's a couple markers up there. If we aren't able to acknowledge or get to the questions, if you have them as we're talking through things, I would encourage folks to, as they're fresh, put them on this page here. That'll allow us to then bring it back to the committee if we can't get to it during that particular meeting or tonight, to at least answer and address those for the next meeting. So I don't want anyone feeling discouraged if we don't have the ability to pivot and get to every question. We definitely need the input and encourage and want that.
Yeah, because what we do deliver to the select boards, we want to be as solid and as appropriate for the next step as possible. Sounds good to me.
Recommend anything real formal on a vote or anything of sorts.
Yeah, it would be good to at least have the
Committee
committee
vote
say they
or-
want to have their own ground rules.
Anyone that would like to make a motion to consider approving these ground rules?
I'll move to approve the ground rules that are before us.
Second.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
I think they look very inappropriate.
Next agenda item is to discuss and review the draft interlocal agreement. I know Kevin's primarily been working on that. It's available. We touched on it very briefly, I think at the last meeting, but very briefly. There's some additional changes that Kevin was working on later this afternoon. I did not print out that.
That's okay. We can always just pull it up.
Okay.
Pull it up, yeah. And then I can walk through it. I was working on a separate presentation and I realized, I just opened the document and use it as a working draft while we're. What do we do before this technology?
All right, where do you
A lot of
want?
overhead projectors and.
And you'll see that both Andrew and I are in this document right now. I'll skip past all the preamble stuff. It just explains what the goal of this was. And I think the first important point here is the voter approval process. I'm just gonna skip over definitions for now. If you can read through what
That's
I've
fine,
drafted
yeah.
already, but if you go down to 3. Also, purpose of the agreement to establish a joint public works department to perform designated public work functions on behalf of both parties, organizational structure, and ideally, this is to improve service delivery efficiency and accountability by pooling our personnel, equipment, and expertise. So voter approval, this document would have to be approved by both communities at a town meeting or a special town meeting,
Yeah.
annual town meeting or a special town meeting. So recognizing that, I want this to be as tight a document as possible before we even consider that. And of course, as we said before, we need to make sure that the numbers work. We have done a lot of work on the numbers and we'll come back to that after this. So yeah, this one, yeah, scroll down and. So on the joint oversight board, so I look at this more of a interlocal agreement, not as a council of governments. And we talked about that at prior meetings, the different types of ways that you can create these. So this would be a joint oversight board. And this would, based on some of the conversations we had, and you can see my notes on the right there from before. I resolved it and then I reopened it because I want to be able to point back to this and say, this is what we talked about. Initially I had just consists of 4 voting members. And we were really sure are these select board members? Are these members of the public? How do you create this? A good recommendation during our meeting was 3 appointed members from each town. And no more than 2 elected select board members from each town. So the boards have the discretion. Do they want 2 members of their select board on this on this joint oversight board? Do they want 1? Do they want none? Maybe they have 3 members of the public who would be good. Representation for this oversight board. The managers from both towns would also serve on that board without voting rights. And they'll serve staggered 3-year terms. So 3 people, 3 years each year, potentially someone else is being recommended by the select board from that town. Quorum and voting, I need to adjust that because I increased the number of people. So that should probably go to 4. Yes? Yeah.
Yes.
And does that need to be 2 from each town to be a quorum?
Oh, that's a
Or
good.
can you have 3 from one town and 1 from another? Does that make a quorum?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yes. Good questions.
That's a good question.
Quorum shall consist of 4 voting members. At least 2. On each town. So all actions will require 4. Because 3 would be 30 or 50%. You want more than 50% per vote, so.
Exactly.
Good guy. I only fixed the first part, not that second part. Powers and duties, so. This is where, so I want to still have clear delineation between the HR functions of the department. Would fall with the municipality that's managing the staff. And the duties and powers would be more of the oversight of the director and the manager. Related to this, so I put adopt department level operation policies, standards, services levels recommended by the public works director. Approve the annual operating and capital budget for submission to each town. So it's a recommended budget that goes to each of the towns. Appoint, evaluate, and remove the public works director in accordance with Article 5, which we'll go down to shortly. Approve multi-year capital improvement and equipment replacement plans. Establish performance expectations and service benchmarks for the department. So there's standards for ditches, culvert, and tree covers, a little bit we talked about last meeting.
Resolve disputes between the parties related to the department operations or interpretations of the agreement, and adopt bylaws governing the procedures and conduct of the board. Similar to how we just talked about our ground rules, create some bylaws. I haven't done that yet. So the limitations, the board shall not directly supervise department employees, intervene in day-to-day operations, adopt or administer personnel policies, direct individual hiring, discipline, or termination actions, except for how we deal with our public works director. And then personnel policies shall be the personnel policies of the managing municipality. And managing municipality is defined further down.
In 4.5, I think it's mentioned elsewhere, but there's also no, the governing board can't change the budget, right? They can only recommend a budget to the towns.
Yep,
Where is that mentioned?
it's down in there's a section on the budget,
Okay,
budget cost sharing and funding. They should not have the authority to appropriate funds, so.
okay.
I think down in like 7 or 8. So I mentioned the personnel policy process. Now, the director shall be appointed by the board upon the joint recommendation of the town managers of Newcastle and Damariscotta. So the process of finding the person and hiring the person should fall to the managers, and they both have to write a recommendation for the board to consider.
Yeah, just like we do individually in towns right now with appointments.
Correct.
No change, yeah.
Except for that you know, like, you have both managers involved in that
Right,
process.
yes.
So they're finding the right person together rather than, let's say, Damariscotta is the managing municipality. I'm not so happy about who he's decided to bring to the joint committee or the
Yeah.
joint board to say, I want this guy as the public works director, who I have not been able to work well in the past, or I've known him from somewhere else and know that he's not a great candidate. So it'd be better if the two town managers are in that process together.
Yeah,
Performance evaluation is conducted jointly by the managers. And termination is also a joint recommendation or joint written recommendation of both managers. But also needs now upon a vote of 4 affirmative board members. You know, and then I'll wait administrative leave need there too. So the duties: serve as the road commissioner for the towns, manage day-to-day operations, supervise staff. Consistent with the policies from that town, develop and recommend department level operation policies for board review or board approval. I've started making a list of those in another document. Implement all board adopted policies. Prepare draft budgets and capital plans, coordinate with town managers, and ensure compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. This director is also supervised by the town manager of the managing municipality. So they don't have now a board of 6 that they present their budget to. They have a manager who they communicate with on a day-to-day basis to address personnel matters, performance, discipline within the staff, purchasing and financial procedures would go to the managing municipality. And then, of course, safety and regulatory compliance is both state, DOL, and what we have in place. So this is how I see the director works with the non-managing municipality in terms of making sure that the workload is developed and followed through with, but reports to the manager from the managing municipality. And then accountability down there. Board for policy, service levels, strategic priorities, and budget performance. And the town manager for compliance with administrative policies, personnel policies, and daily operational oversight. The next section is talks now about the managing municipality. So, as part of this agreement, it doesn't define which town would do it. It just says one of the towns will be decided by a resolution from both of the select boards. So all of the personnel And this is what came up at our last meeting, talking a little bit about concerns about labor relations. I added another section 6.6, which we'll get to in a second. But all the personnel and administrative authority would fall with the managing municipality. Serve as the fiscal agent, purchasing, insurance, legal coordination, maintain the financial records. It doesn't, the department level policies fall to the board, not the department. The department level policies, and there's a lot of policies related to public works for safety reasons that don't exist in many other aspects of municipal government. Except maybe police and fire, have their own sets, but I was trying to make sure that that limitation is in there. So those service levels, the operational policies, that high level stuff is all with the joint oversight board. And then, so the relationship with the board, shall implement the board appointed policies, through the director, but shall not supersede board authority on policy budget. Or it's almost redundant, but, what I think is important here is then, what came of our last discussion, was collective bargaining. Should the department decide to go the route of union, for labor negotiations, this is what I came up with. So in the event that that happens, the town manager, so that it would be, from a legal standpoint, collective bargaining falls to the legal authority of the employer of record. So if whoever the managing municipality is the employer of record, and it would be the responsibility of that town manager to negotiate on behalf of the select board from that town. What I did do is I included the town manager of non-managing municipalities shall be entitled to participate in collective bargaining negotiations as a member. And then prior to execution of any tentative collective bargaining agreement, town managers shall both review the agreement for consistency with this agreement, projected budgets and cost sharing obligations. If the non-managing municipality raises objections based on material, financial, or operational impacts, that will be referred to the joint oversight board for review and recommendation before execution. So the joint board would have some say if there's real big concerns about what's being proposed or has been negotiated by the managing town on behalf of the joint board. Joint board would have some say in what goes to the select board of the managing municipality. Okay. It's the best I could come up with, trying to address this, but when I was looking into the legal concerns, it was, there has to be an employer of record.
Right,
And it can't be both towns.
Correct.
So you have to define it some way.
Yeah.
And I think that this at least gives both the non-managing municipality manager a chance to be part of the negotiations. And then if there are real concerns that are raised, they can be reviewed with the joint
oversight board.
Right, and their recommendation would go to the select board that's gonna ultimately decide on the contract for the negotiations. Okay. That was a lot.
Yeah, I see.
That's why I spent an hour and a half working on today.
Well,
there's layers in there that.
Start a corporation,
Right,
right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
yes,
Like it's either this sort of an agreement or
Yeah.
we enter into some sort of a business agreement, entity. So, yeah.
yeah, but the benefits to work in municipal government are
Oh, yeah.
better.
Oh, absolutely.
So budget approval authority, and this comes back to what you were just saying a few minutes ago, Rufus, the approval authority. So the joint oversight board does not have authority to appropriate funds. What they have is a responsibility to review the budget, make a recommendation to the two towns, based on the cost share. So, shall be considered a recommended joint budget subject to approval, modification, or rejection by each town. So go to the select boards to incorporate into their overall municipal budgets that go to currently at your town meeting form of government. Community. So it would go to the legislative body as a warrant article. So that's the responsibility. Development of the recommended budget. So working with the director to do so. Obviously, the managers are involved in that process too. And then each town select board shall review, as I said already, approve the budget as submitted, propose modifications for board reconsideration, or decline to approve all or a portion of the budget. So final funding of department shall be subject to appropriation by each town's legislative body, i.e. the voters as required by law. And the cost sharing obligation. Each town shall fund its share accordance with the approved cost share formula. So if one town modifies or declines to appropriate, I was trying to figure this out too. Adjust the department budget or its service levels accordingly, identify alternative funding arrangements acceptable by towns. It's a little unclear, and I also put a note in there about its relation with the collective bargaining agreement. But I think this is where that cost share obligation, adjusting the budget to, so it's like, that's the challenging part, is if you have a joint board, oversight board, who's responsible for recommending a budget to the select boards, and the select boards don't accept it or modify it, and there's got to be enough time to make sure it comes back to the board to reconsider, or call a workshop of both select boards and the to resolve any issues. I think that's where my hardest challenge is trying to figure out what that looks like. The fun part is if you keep it vague enough here, you get to make it up as you go. Which happens sometimes.
That's what creating a legal document.
Is that right? That's called legalese, right?
No, you just have to, you
Yeah.
have to make up a process,
We love-
and you have to stick to it, that's all.
Yeah.
The number of times I've had to do that in ordinance drafting amazes me.
Oh, yeah, make it consistent. And, yeah,
Yep.
Like I say, there's so many layers to it, it's.
Oh, and then failure to appropriate, if the town fails to appropriate sufficient funding. I was thinking about, I was thinking about what the schools do, where it's just goes back to the prior year's budget. And that's what gets approved, but you still need, what happens? Has either of these towns experienced this when a warrant article related to a budget amount for just completely fails? Or is it a revised down or revised?
Happened to me once, there was a contracted service line for law enforcement, all in Violent Haven. At town meeting, it was voted no, just, do you accept this number? No. So in that moment, I guess the next day, told the sheriff that we didn't approve a budget, you have $0 we have $0 to work with.
Yeah.
But we came back as a community and they had a big public meeting and we did call another town meeting.
Special town meeting.
Prior to the commitment, so at least we were able to get in before that, and avoided a supplemental tax bill at least. And so there was time. I guess the question, perhaps is when you go beyond the commitment, that becomes a whole nother layer to raising the money. Then if you need to raise it from taxation, how do you do that? So I think it might be worth exploring, would there be an option to have a continuation of funds if voted no, continuation of funds from the previous year's amount? As one option. Or does it require
Is there a way that we can structure the fiscal year of this department differently than the rest of the towns? So there's a month or there's 2 months between when the budget's approved and when the new fiscal year starts?
It'd be tough on that.
Thinking outside the box.
Appropriations and.
I don't know that you really
Could do that.
I was thinking from an auditor's perspective, it's not
Right.
gonna operate under the one fiscal year.
Yeah.
The levying of the taxes, if whatever amount comes from that source, still be done as part of your commitment process.
Probably be easier to have
Creating a separate entity like the transfer station does, in Norfolk or Jefferson, you'd have the opportunity to create presumably your own fiscal year. But under this scenario, you'd wanna probably have it be tied to whatever your.
right, it's probably easier to have some sort of a rainy day fund built into the budget or something like that.
Yeah.
So that if appropriations aren't, or like immediate, then you've
Yeah.
got a month of runway or 2 months of runway or whatever.
Do you have it in here, anything about at the end of a year, if all of the funds from the department aren't expended, where that goes?
It goes to their fund balance, is what would be created as part of this is a separate dedicated fund specifically for this. Should a fund balance be established at the beginning of this?
Probably start with MMA, or you got an attorney on. Whatever would work,
Yeah,
to try and get a first crack at the kind of legal advice on.
yeah, I think 7.4 and 7.5 are probably the most still foggy pieces for me. Like, I
Yeah,
do want
I-
more time on this.
It's,
Um,
yeah, trying to look at the scenarios where. What happens where and what are the repercussions and how does that play out? Yeah, without having to, yeah, like default back on an old budget, but
yeah,
if you're. If the appropriations aren't there from the voters, like how do you fall back on an old budget if you, I don't know. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you got a great start on it. I mean, I don't have the answer for you, Kevin, but it says a lot to unpack there, but yeah.
it's all right. I mean, as long as other areas are starting to clarify, it's easier to hone in on
Yeah,
the time and resources to figure this out. All right, so annual reports will be presented to the boards and towns. And you know, this would also be included as part of the annual audit by the managing municipality. I want to put something in there about that.
and you want to scroll down there, that, you got the.
And then equipment and capital, and this will get, I think we'll get into more. Board appointed, board approved assets remain jointly owned, storage replacement disposal shall follow board plans and cost sharing formulas. I put a comment in here and I didn't have a chance to address this one, so creating a certain level of capital needs or an expectation level to come with this. I didn't do that yet, but I will. So it's more the end of this document than I'm still working on, I guess. Term withdrawal and termination. So ideally, you know, the towns tried to have joint public works. It was literally written on 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
After first being written on a napkin. I want to make sure that if we're gonna do this, or if this does happen. Or the recommendation is to do something like this, that it is not easy for a town to withdraw.
And it
And
has to be robust.
so, I put an initial term of 25 years. I was looking at other agreements, they're anywhere from 10 to 30. So I just picked 25, unless earlier termination that's drawn out in this article about how that can happen. I mean, we recognize if we do this, this is a long-term term. Oh, next, the party acknowledge that this long-term term, it is term, okay, is necessary to support capital investment, land acquisition, construction of facilities, and long-term financing. So even if in year 1 through 3, we don't construct a building, buy land, construct a building, there's still mechanisms to address this. So the intent of the long-term commitment, create a durable long-term joint public works function. It would materially impair the ability for the department to meet its obligations if one town were to withdraw. And then capital investments rely on the expectation of continued participation by both towns. So restrictions on withdrawal. Hey, mom, all good. You gotta go, you know? Not yet. Please don't be. So restriction on withdrawal, I don't know if this, what value this particular line has. I was just trying to think about when it would be okay to withdraw versus when, you know, trying to create a culture of, no, we don't want to do this. So I was thinking about withdrawal reasons should not be political change, budget preference, or disagreement with board decisions. You know, I think personnel matters are also another reason not to withdraw. Those can be resolved.
Thoughts from the committee on that?
Well, you've got penalties, right, on withdrawal.
Yeah, so I can just go come back.
I don't know if you need to, I mean,
Is this overkill?
I think so, because it's a gray area again, right?
Yeah.
But if you have, I mean, if a town chooses withdrawal, here's the penalties, you know, I mean, you can pick whatever reason, but
Yeah.
this is what's gonna happen if you do, so, I strike that. Yeah.
So, and I might move this one up, but so there's this option of early withdrawal, so this is pre-facility. So, if withdrawal occurs prior to land acquisition or execution of construction contracts, the withdrawing town shall provide a year's written notice and reimburse for planning, design, engineering, legal, administrative costs incurred, and contractual penalties or sunk costs resulting from withdrawal. So this might be, you know, some equipment is purchased, staff are hired, the withdrawing town shall pay for that, as well as a year's written notice. But after a facility is built, it goes into more of this after capital. So go back up to 10-4. I might switch those two around.
That probably makes sense, just in terms of like, okay, here are the steps we're gonna follow.
Yeah, I realize this as I'm talking
Yeah,
about it
no,
rather than I was writing it.
That's why it's a draft.
That's right. So after insurance of debt, 2 years notice, to the other town. So the town that wants to get out would write a notice to the other town and the joint oversight board. Following approval by its legislative body.
What does written notice mean? Do you need to describe that? Does it need to be published in,
No, it's an email.
it's just an email? Okay,
No, so it still has to be a following approval by its legislative body. So what would happen is the town who says, sorry, guys, I just can't stand you anymore.
We're out.
I'm gonna go convince my town in legislative at next town meeting that we're gonna get out. And after that approval happens, I would then write a letter or an email to the joint committee and the manager in the other town and say, our legislative body, the residents of Newcastle said we're done. And that's enough.
Okay.
That's the intent of that.
Yeah, okay.
And so there's a penalty, financial penalty, buyout obligation. So withdrawing towns pro rata share of all outstanding debt, lease obligations, or contractual commitments for the department, plus their pro rata share of unamortized capital cost of land, buildings, equipment, amortized over a 30-year useful life, calculated from the effective date of withdrawal, and any additional costs incurred by the remaining town as a result of the withdrawal, including refinancing costs, legal fees, and transition costs. So it is a very expensive endeavor for one town to remove themselves as part of this. Can be done, but the intent is to continue to make the other town whole while that transition happens. And even during that time, those 2 years while this is happening, they're gonna continue to fund the department during the notice period and until all financial obligations are satisfied. So it can be done, but it's not an easy, I joked about email, but that's essentially what happened last time. And that's all it took.
it's also, yeah.
Question for you, is it the possibility that a town could renegotiate this agreement between yourselves without a penalty?
Termination by mutual agreement, which is the next one, 10-6.
It's not really termination, I'm just saying change the.
Yeah, that's further down,
Changes.
that's further down too. Amendments is number 12 on this. And then, so, yeah, termination by mutual agreement. Written plan for disposal of assets, so on and so forth, so can be done. Again, this is also a decision by both legislative bodies. So if the managers and the select board say, we don't want to do this anymore. And the town folks at a town meeting say,
Yeah.
we agree with you,
Goes on the warrant.
we're gonna then figure out a way to dissolve. The fun stuff, we're talking a lot about default around here these days.
Ugh.
I the non-defaulting town. Yeah, so demand cure, essentially become, what's the business term for, you'd have a lien on the other town to make sure that at least this department was funded while you go through, bankruptcy filing, but right now you can't, municipalities can't file bankruptcy in Maine. So, not yet. There's legislation right now to address the county of Washington to solve this, so. I don't think that's kind of a slippery slope. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, but it's currently being talked about by the state legislature, so. I'll put this in here as a way to try to address it if it were to happen. I mean. Peter hasn't reviewed this with me yet, our attorney, town's attorney, but he might say, yeah, you can just scrap that, especially if that legislation doesn't pass, so. That may not be in here forever. Survival of obligations. And dispute resolution. So. Gotta love to mediate, so we'll do that if we need to. And then amendments, to Merle's point. So this can be amended, so material effects. So rights, obligations, funding commitments. Must be submitted to and approved by the voters of each town in accordance with the way we do town meeting. So, but non-substantive amendments, and I kind of defined a few of them, such as clerical corrections or updates to exhibits that do not alter obligations, may be adopted by a mutual select board approval without voter approvals. So like the board bylaws may be amended by the select boards. They don't need to be, that doesn't need to go back to the exhibit, exhibit C doesn't have to be, or the org chart, like, we add more staff or we add another layer in at some point in the future. Those would be considered substantive amendments. So I think so I did put some definition of material amendments in there as examples. So it alters for how we withdraw, cost share, modify the cost share formula, or change the financial obligations, change the governance structure of the oversight board. Change of the rules, how so the substantive stuff. And then this is governed, I just put the governing law is chapter 30A, chapter 115. So talking about interlocal cooperation. And that's the interlocal agreement. It's a lot of time on it, but I think it was important to just kind of walk through it.
A lot of time.
And I still have a few areas to clean up, but
How many napkins does this take to write it?
I didn't. I just sat with the computer for a few days. No napkins were involved.
Yeah.
I promise, no
Well,
napkins.
Kevin, appreciate the work. This is I mean, to your point, like the original agreement, and I know folks were concerned because of that first time it was tried, and it was just, I think, realize how thin that agreement is. I mean, this is a big project if it went forward. I'm happy we've got so much built in there so far that people understand this has to go up to the legislative body. There's so many things in there that understand it still has to get voted on. Yeah, and I don't have anything to jump on right now, but it's a great draft. So.
Well, as we refine this, and hopefully if members of the public have thoughts or things, please add them to the whiteboard over there. My other thought is, obviously our next step is to go through the budget and review the budget. And if we get to a place where people are comfortable with the budget, or they wanna move forward with the budget, and the boards wanna move forward with this, I think about the timeline.
Mhm.
Cause the first thing that needs to be done is, would the public be interested in this, based on what we identify for our budget?
Right.
Say this is what we wanna do. Here's the interlocal agreement. If we know that the communities are supportive of it by a vote on the interlocal agreement, that can be established ahead of any conversation about land acquisition or facility building.
Oh, yeah.
Cause that's a whole nother step.
That's another-
We can't even go like, sure, we can look at land that's on the market, we can talk to neighbors who might be interested. But until we know that the communities are supportive.
Yeah,
of this
absolutely, yeah, you can't,
process,
one step at a time, yeah,
And
yeah, I agree.
yeah, so
We all
that's,
do, yeah.
that's all I think about is this,
Yeah.
this is probably the primary piece of this. So another comment came up, last time we met, I hadn't talked about cost share, so that's the next tab over there, Andy. Top of that. Exhibit A is cost share agreement. I just pulled this from, I did present this information to you back in our working group meeting on 9/15. And we checked with the select boards after that, just to give you an idea of what the options are. We looked at, the example we used to try to think about the cost shares came primarily from the folks from the county that we talked to last time. And their formula is based on the bottom one there, the centerline miles, average maintenance. So for the folks in the room who aren't clear about what winter maintenance is versus summer maintenance, winter maintenance is all of the roads that each town plows in the winter, because that includes not just town roads, but also state aid roads. Summer maintenance is, and the state is responsible for the summer maintenance of state aid roads. Towns are not responsible for those. So, in the winter, you're plowing all of those 21.93 and 42.62 miles of road for the two towns, but in the summer, you're maintaining fewer miles. And so that's why that average maintenance, average miles gives you kind of I think the best formula for this department. Now, when you talk about administrative responsibilities, they use population and state valuation as part of it. For example, the Nobleboro Jefferson transfer station, they use population and each year's state valuation to determine who the share for their.
Yeah, how the share is
supposed to use. I just threw square miles in there for fun.
I'm fine with square miles.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I'm just curious how this average maintenance number compares to where our budgets are currently. Like,
Oh, good question.
are we, that much, are we spending that much more on roads than Damariscotta? Like,
No,
two towns? Yeah.
So I would say that there's a very large difference in what we're spending for capital,
Sure,
and that's a separate decision by select boards.
but how about?
But it should influence what the workloads are,
Yeah,
because a lot of that is, when you're talking about capital needs, our towns are not gonna own paving equipment.
sure. Yeah.
So it's more about like getting ready for a paving project.
Right.
Or ultimately we end up we
Or
wanna get more done.
maintaining so that we don't have to pave as often.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So I think on terms of and we can go look at the budgets now, but I think we're pretty comparable in terms of what we're spending for winter maintenance and summer.
Yeah, I have to look, at off the top of my head, I can't remember.
I'm just
It's a good
just
comparison,
curious,
yeah.
just to know
See where
where that falls.
Yeah, it's
today.
close, right? Yeah.
Because I'm sure that both towns would love to see their numbers not change a lot, unless it's to go down a lot.
I don't think that's gonna
Service
be.
goes up,
Yeah.
cost goes
Numbers
down.
go down, everybody's happy, but if one town sees a significant rise and the other town sees a small rise, that might present a problem and
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One town sees an increase and one sees
a decrease, exactly, yeah. That could be problematic.
See how that plays in.
All right, I didn't do an org chart and I haven't done bylaws yet, so I just wanted to present what I know could be options. But I think honestly, my recommendation would be based on the, average miles. Average maintenance mile.
Yeah, I mean, that probably makes sense.
Did, has Paul had a chance to see has he worked with you on this, the interlocal or anything? Does he have any comments or
No,
Yeah.
Paul, do you have
do you
comments
have any
on
concerns on anything you saw there?
the interlocal agreement, Paul?
Oh, he's muted.
It'd be nice if I could run my computer. It actually, I actually like your layout, Kevin. I agree. My 2 cents worth was that, once they agree that you're gonna go do something, I like the penalty part of getting out. Just because it's a commitment. There will be ups and downs and there'll be bumps in the road, but they can all, as you said, they can all be negotiated out. So I don't see anything really stand out, anything that I wouldn't agree with. Well done.
No glaring omissions or anything? No.
No,
All right, Andrew, wanna jump on to the next thing?
We can. Just a quick check-in with the committee expectation for the duration for tonight. You thinking by 7:30 latest? 17,
Sounds pretty good to me.
7's close, though.
Yeah.
7:30.
Yeah, if we wrap by 7:30,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think I'd like to just offer just a chance for a couple questions, and anything beyond the two, I would encourage folks to put on the board, but based on the conversation around that agreement as it's currently drafted, anything that jumps out that anyone wants to share or
Glaring.
raise?
And the difficulty of getting it out of this makes it almost impossible financially for either town. So you're locking people in, and if something goes awry, the town's people are the ones that are gonna pay for this. Dearly pay for it, and taxes and so forth.
Right.
We make light of the first agreement that was written on a piece of paper and handed around. But when that dissolved, there was not a lot of financial problems going on. And that made it a lot easier to say, hey, this didn't work once. You're locking it in so hard that nobody's gonna dare to say somebody stakes on it here. And it makes it very difficult for people to pay taxes and so forth, or to make plans for things like that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else have anything?
My concern with that is I don't see clearly, before you go through all this other gobbledygook, how you're gonna differentiate what town is gonna be what for. So if this is a $5 million or a $10 million project, how much is Damariscotta gonna pay and how much is Newcastle gonna pay? I mean, you spent hours doing that, and I appreciate that, Kevin, but to me, I would have started with my cost and how we're gonna divide this up before we even get into it, how the town's gonna split this. If you're gonna take it to the taxpayers wanna know if this $5 million deal or $10 million deal, are we on the hook in Damariscotta for 70% or 40% or what?
And how does that equate to mill rates?
Exactly.
The mill rates, John Clark, North Newcastle, the mill rates of the 3 towns, this is patterned after, or taken from, those mill rates are all within a percentage point. We've called up there and talked to those people in Chapman, Castleville, Mapleton. It's like 13 per thousand valuation of property in all those towns.
13, 14, 14.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Damariscotta's mill rate's like 21. Newcastle's is 14.3.
0.3. That's a big disparity in differences.
Yeah, it's
And we have more roads,
that's not been addressed in any documentation that I've read online within the work that's been generated so far. Nothing that's been written in the paper refers or references what the mill rates are. And that's the rub. In the end, I believe Mr. Sidewinder,
Exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
that's the rub.
we need to know what we're up against, because we're gonna get put in, like you said, into a program that we really are locked into. So you can't say in 4 years, I'm gonna re-roll somebody else, right? So you're locked in for 25 years, right?
That's
So
the
I
intent.
spent a lot of time dancing around all, the key issue is how much it's gonna cost and who's gonna pay what. All this other getting in and managers and how many people you're gonna have, that's all beside the point. If you lock down how much equipment you need and how many men you're gonna have and who's gonna pay what, all the rest of the stuff you can address after the fact. But I've been to 6 meetings now and I've watched this thing and watched you guys dance around that. And like Mr. Clark said, I haven't seen anything in the paper or anything else, or who's paying what yet.
So rest assured, the hours spent doing this drafting of this document, as many or more hours have been spent on different budget scenarios, all driven by input we've had so far and from this committee about the different service levels that we've talked about. And so we've kind of set goalposts. At one point, we had kind of gone forward with like a more standard approach cost service level. We had a premium level and a standard level, premium being kind of defined as what we get today in terms of like a winter operation. You know, both towns get a pretty darn good level of service in the wintertime for folks to move around and travel on the road safely. And so starting with that, so yes,
Oh, I
those
hear
are.
what you're saying, Andy, about the level, but the bare facts is what town, how much is each town gonna pay?
Understood, so just that is happening as well, but we just aren't at a point, there's nothing in the paper because we aren't at a point to present to the public saying like, this is the number, right? And so as the committee works through this process, like this draft is something with your input, trying to make sure that we've got the best draft available when it's time to share with the public. Here's the version. It'll be a different type of format for the meeting for the public to be at than what this is right now.
And as I mentioned, this information right here on the slot, on the screen right now, showing Exhibit A, that bottom average maintenance, that's essentially what the recommendation I had for this committee to
For the
consider,
cost,
to give to the select boards to say, it's about a 36-64 split. That's what this is coming
The
down
recommendation at the moment to the committee is.
to this committee, is that number right there. And now, on the agenda, we're gonna talk about the budget itself. So are there questions about the agreement?
I just wanna make a point that I think we can look at it two ways. We can look at it that we can choose our own destiny by doing something together. And hopefully come up with a plan where we can control our cost together with our own people. Or we can be held hostage to the people that we contract out to. And I feel very strongly that that's what's been happening the last few years. We don't have a choice. There's not a lot of people who wanna plow snow and do winter maintenance. And when you put those bids out there, you get what you get, and if you have a low year, you get it put to you, and if you have a big year, they're still making money. So I like the idea that we can control our destiny with something like this. Granted, it sounds like there's a ton more work to do, but I like the idea of it than being held hostage to what, I mean, I watch every year, I go to town meeting, I see what it's costing us to do this road maintenance. And I'd like to think that we had a little more control over it than we do now, because right now we have very little, so.
Perfect. For the sake of moving forward, the committee's conversation, any other things that related to that as it's come up, please do feel free to pop them on that board there, that paper there, so that we can have the committee address those afterwards. Timing discussion. You started to talk a little bit, Kevin, about, having this agreement potentially be the precursor to kind of some of the other stuff that'll come later in terms of acquisition, potential property, hunting and whatnot. So just checking in with the boards, we both have town meetings in January and June. And I think this year we're the same date, just about. Is that true? You got Newcastle gonna do everything via the referendum, the ballot?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I think before we were like maybe a week or two off from each other on those final votes, but so we're much closer aligned this year. Working back from that, warrants are typically set in April for that, early April for that. So we've got between now and end of March to come to the, be able to share with the public for March, what it is, where we might be asking them to consider for June. So for the committee, like where, you know, what is it you wanna have available by then? Alternatively, you could have a special meeting same day, but, you know, there's a couple ways to approach that, but ideally, assuming you might wanna have that on the ballots
Have something on the
as they're
ballot.
printed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we would need to get this, you know, a package together, because, you know, as we voiced tonight, and the major concerns are gonna be budget numbers, right, which is obviously in the works, but, the sooner between the meetings, that's because you're gonna have public input's gonna derive some, there's gonna be more questions and whatnot once that budget's in there, so, not to rush the group like I haven't been doing anything, but you know, it's gonna be. But it sounds like it's the interlocal agreement and the budget are the two biggest pieces. I mean, the policies can be built with time. I mean,
Yeah, budget,
framework.
interlocal is necessary, but the budget side
The
is, yeah,
share
and the cost sharing, yeah.
and
So
understanding
you-
how much that affects mill rate.
Exactly, that package, you say, hey, this is the presentation, you know, this is what we're looking at for costs and how it's split up and how the agreement will up, and having those three things together would be, I would think, presenting it to a public meeting would, at that point, would make sense, I don't know. Maybe that- with that.
All right. We can skip policy review because I touched on that last time. It's
Yeah.
a list. I mean, and pull it up for a minute so that there's one more people here
Yeah.
today than there were last time.
Well, a lot of stuff you're gonna follow, yeah, your HR stuff already, and then you have what, you know, OSHA and state and federal standards that you're gonna have to follow, so there's not a lot there.
I tried to make a list of the
Yeah.
different policies that ultimately the joint oversight board would have to review and authorize for the director to manage the staff, their staff. So safety and risk, administrative personnel, a lot of those are gonna fall to, you know, so they're very different. Some of the administrative and personnel ones are different than what I have in place, cause I don't have any overtime, really. Or, you know, snow removal time, you know, it's like, there's more
Yeah.
policies beyond what. My town would, if we were the managing municipality, would have to have incorporated. So I was thinking through those, and then I was looking at operations and service delivery. And a handful of different policies will go with that. Financial purchase asset policy, so all of these, there's links on the agenda. You should be able to get access to review what I've started, and I drafted 2 policies just to kind of give them examples. But this is less relevant to the larger question, do we even want to do this? So.
Right, yeah.
I left it at this, and I won't go any further with it.
Yeah, we don't need to deep dive into that.
No.
Right now, yeah.
We just know that they'll have to be addressed.
They'll have, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the homework of a
Yep.
joint work. The point of the board would be to review those policies, adopt them for the department
Mhm.
to utilize.
Mhm.
It's kind of a very heavy paper load, but it's necessary for risk management
Mhm.
and safety. And I don't think that link's gonna take you to the one that you've been working on. I think
No,
that takes me to the holding place, so if you wanna. Open the one that you've got. Andy has put a lot of time into this aspect of it.
Where is all this, if we wanna look at it, is it on Damariscotta's website? or-
Yeah, I've mostly been keeping it on their website, because they have a little more robust of a site to handle this stuff, so all of the material. The links to the videos, the agendas, everything.
I was gonna pull it up, right? Yeah, and you have a direct link to ours on your town site.
Yep.
Right, and so if folks go to the damariscotta.maine.gov, you can still type damariscotta.me.com, it'll direct you here. But under our government tab, we have a committee page for this.
Damn new.
And
Original.
we have the original, the timeline as it was proposed back last summer.
Yeah, it's not, that needs to be updated, Andrew.
Yes, yeah. And then we got the
We did go to the.
agendas and minutes.
We did go to the boards in end of September, early October, and said, we're not ready to deliver a final document to you in December, so.
Yeah.
They were both fine with it.
Yeah, it's a continuation, yeah.
I don't know, Andy and I have had a few other priorities this year.
Right, so if you go to our agenda center, toggle between the calendar years and you'll see. Back to July, the agendas, the way Kevin puts those together, he puts links in the agenda, so you can go to the other documents.
So go to back to 2026. Oh, you're gonna go to the other.
Right, and so that's what it would look like for folks that went online to pull up that agenda, you'd be able to click on that.
And after tonight's meeting, after you go through your budget, I will migrate to that link. We'll take you to a lot of the information we're gonna talk about tonight. I just didn't have a chance to move it over.
I did. Elapse a lot of those and printed that out for the committee members, just. There's a lot of line items in there as our budgets, certain departments have longer line item, list of items than others. Trying to draft and create this, it comes with probably more than any. Two of our biggest have. Just to make sure it's as detailed as possible, as we're trying to plan this, there's so many places that. Things can creep up when you're working on roads and can't account for storm damages and over time. So trying to make sure it's all in there. We can always consolidate and pull out some later on, but try to break it up into kind of some major categories: personnel services, supplies, purchase professional.
Sometimes that, Andy, so some of us will think that.
Sure.
Scoop up and get it up.
Is that any better? A little better?
Oh, you don't need the account line.
Hey, that's good.
You don't need the account numbers.
Perfect. So the way we were structuring this was looking at multiple service levels again. You can put them kind of side by each to look at what those costs were and how they changed when you're looking at a premium versus a standard level versus what came out of the last meeting was the idea of potentially phasing into. And so I think of it in terms of like the winter contracts, which of the two winter contracts, you want to look at it that way. You want to staff up to perform one of those as a starting point, which one? So I don't think I fully built out if we took on just the roads one, but kind of assume that, perhaps the downtown one from working with in Damariscotta, two contractors on it, the downtown one kind of seems like its own terrible beast, and probably one of the more difficult ones of the two. And so I don't know if that would make more sense to try and take that one on. The equipment load for that, some of that could be leased versus purchased, shorter periods of time needed versus buying out a fleet of trucks. And so I didn't know, in my mind, that seemed like maybe an easier one phase to consider starting with.
Well, and
not
also
locking us into as much.
part of that phasing is what do we need for buildings?
Right.
Obviously we want to think big picture and work for purchasing land, but maybe we think a little leaner in terms of, do we need 4 bays or can we get away with 2? Do we need, can we design a site and a building or buildings that are easy to add to as we expand into doing more and more. And that might make the initial budget a little bit easier to swallow, especially if, we have to purchase land and do all planning stuff, regardless of where we start.
Right.
To then say, all right, we're gonna start with 4 employees and just focus on the downtown and figure out what it makes sense for some of us to take on. Probably not gonna be doing all the ditching right off with it, but maybe we can do some of the tree work or some of the,
Stage
it, and if we can show a budget where it's phases, phase 1 downtown. And we build this building and we purchase this land. Phase 2, we buy a couple more trucks, we get a couple more people in, we add on to the buildings that we've got, in phase 3, all right, now we need a remote sand shed and we need this and we need that. If we grew into it over 5 or 7 or 10 years, as if that were our plan to start, it might make a lot more financial sense for the towns.
But if you start with this low level of service. And it doesn't work. Then we're kind of locked in, right?
The agreement allows for
Mutual
mutual termination. It just has to be a vote by the both towns.
Other than the Mapleton, Chapman and Castle Hill interlocal agreement, are there any other communities in the state that do it this way?
That's a question for Paul. You've talked to quite a few towns that have done joint public works, or there are plenty of other examples of municipal services, not necessarily public works, where there are multiple towns participating, such as police or fire. Public works is probably a few. Paul?
Yeah, there's a few public works departments that are kind of jointly owned. But most that I hear right now is small to medium-sized communities are being squeezed by contractors, and they are looking to do exactly what you're doing from a layout standpoint. When is it cost effective to look towards having your own department, as somebody said earlier, self-determination. There's less joint public works new, but there's joint public works old, some that have been doing it for many years. These agreements were put into place, 10, 15 years ago. So I'm not sure that's that answers the question. But I wouldn't say less money means less service. Is that kind of, I don't think you're going to do less service. I think you're going to have services, but you're going to do it at a different level. And I don't think you'll ever let it get down to bad. And that's only an outside person's opinion on low cost. It's not low cost. I think, or low cost does not mean bad service. What it means is a different level of service that you're used to. Because if you want high levels of service all the time, you just got to understand you're going to pay for it. That's whether it's a department, your own department, that you want higher levels of service, you're going to end up paying more. If you want a contractor to do a lot of work, they're going to pay more for it. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Paul?
So I have,
Let's,
yes,
so you got your revised, this is updated budget here.
I mean, it's still in the works as we.
Still in the
continue to
works,
work
yeah,
through
so-
Your input and where you
Yeah,
want to see
yeah.
things, and we don't have, I mean, the buildings piece is another. It's one that we still need to talk about, like.
Yeah.
As a group, it's like, depending on what service level and what you're trying to accomplish, what is it we need to lock in for buildings? I mean, I can run estimates on this structure, that structure, and this scenario, that scenario, but I think having, and I can certainly give you a starting point. But I know, like, I met with Kevin and Rufus last 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever it was.
Yep.
We were going through it. I mean, his idea of if you did the phased approach is, at least setting up some initial upfront site work in a way that allows you to add structure, but maybe you don't need to pour a new pad if you're gonna just simply add length. Maybe the pad's poured initially. So I think there's just like a few, this is where it's like the personnel stuff, I think is a little easier to nail down, and some of those operating
yeah.
costs are a little easier, but when you get into the facility piece, we really need to have more of a robust discussion on this scenario. What do you think of this layout? What do you think of that layout? So maybe at the next meeting, we can get into a little more in the weeds on, based on what service level we're looking at, how we want to approach from a budgeting perspective, looking at those.
We have in this one right here for staffing levels right now. What did you scroll back up there and you had?
So remember, when we initially were talking about standard, that's what we picked to present to the board.
Right.
And they wanted to see both examples here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Premium talks about how many employees? You have your department.
1, 2, 3, 4,
So
5,
what is the difference
Yeah,
between
so-
standard and premium? As opposed to level of service, say, for plowing the road? I get on Delta and I want first class, I know what I'm getting in first class, and I know what I'm getting in economy. As a taxpayer, what am I getting for premium versus standard?
So as Paul would describe standard as more of like your lean, a leaner crew where ultimately, the way this would be structured would be that some of that downtown work, sidewalk work would be more roads are priority. And then we're gonna have a minimal amount of staff being able to deal with that at the same time.
Cause most of the services
versus-
are in Damariscotta.
Versus right now, there are two separate contracts in each town for the roads and the downtown. And so they get kind of equal priority and treatment the way it's set up currently.
Right,
And so that's, the standard is more of an acknowledgement that we're gonna prioritize the roads, most likely, and then look at some of those other pieces as we'll get to them as we
A
can.
lot of it has to do with timing.
Depending on the storm,
Timing on
depending on what's
getting things
happening.
done, yeah.
And so it requires less
Right.
people, a little bit less equipment, but the response time's gonna be different, than what would.
There might be
modeled with
snow
the
on the
premium
sidewalk for
A day.
a day,
Right.
instead of it's all gone at the end of the storm.
Mhm.
That sort of.
we're back to
Yeah.
1950.
Time and so.
And so the way, let's see, we got 1, 2.
That takes a little bit of the subjectivity out of it, but here's what's not subjective. Those roads have got to be able to get EMS, fire, rescue, law enforcement, CMP. So keeping the roads clear for the guy that can't get up early enough in the morning to go to work, and account for the conditions.
So the,
Yeah, that's where performance standards come in. A lot of this is timing,
the different,
timing,
the
yeah.
different,
So,
Yeah, the thing to find it is premium versus standard, I think response time might be a bit.
so we're just gonna try and keep this
Let's get-
again, as much
yeah,
as we
we need to
can.
get through
We need the committee to get through that. I appreciate the questions and I really would encourage folks to put them on the board. There, but no, we wanna try and get through those in the next 18 minutes, the rest of the agenda, but just to answer quickly, the difference in staffing between the two as it's currently drafted here, premium would be 10 full-time staff, standard would be 7. One difference in position would be a mechanic on hand with the premium level of service. So you can handle, breakdowns as are happening to some degree, and get some of the basic services done in-house versus having to rely on an outside garage to do a lot of it.
You just run through the rest of these numbers and
Yeah. So we'll have in there, again, a pretty detailed breakdown of what it takes to run generally a public works department. We are not the first place to do it. Damariscotta runs one on a much smaller scale, but there are plenty of others out there that do this now. And so we're relying on their actual costs to perform the same services, generally speaking, in their towns. Budgeting office supplies, copier fees, postage.
pretty comprehensive budget.
this draft right now, budget is available, that we just showed everybody on the link.
No,
You get to this one to look at it, okay?
The one Kevin has is minus the phase 1.
doesn't have all,
Columns that
and it
we
doesn't
have
have all the
there.
numbers yet. I didn't transfer this over to the new one yet.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
We're
But
talking
there
about it tonight. We'll update it.
Yeah, just to make sure that folks wanna look at it, there's a lot to go through, so if you get a chance to
Actually do it while we're talking.
look through it and if they, that way if they have any questions going forward, yeah. So,
assuming there's a
jumps out,
fire
yeah.
alarm in the facility, that's monitored, where, those are costs identified in there based on our current cost today.
Andy, are you talking only $30,000 in repairs? He's only fixing one truck.
Guys, remember, this is a draft, guys, so we're not gonna get in the weeds here on this, yeah, this is a draft.
I'm just curious, was that for the whole fleet or just one?
That was we had drafted it for the department potentially with a mechanic on staff in that first column. And so, as we do with anything else, we budget as best as we can. If repairs that year, as you certainly well know, could be $80,000, and the way the town operates, that's 50 grand we gotta take from somewhere else in the budget that particular year, or go to the taxpayers. It's not certainly a new concept, we certainly don't wanna under budget it. The reason it's higher in the standard is reflecting that we wouldn't have, as proposed, an in-house mechanic. So we're gonna have to do more out of house, out of the building, and so. Yes, this is based on, again, other cost models that exist out there from some of our neighbors that run public works departments. If they need to be higher, that's something the committee certainly can reflect on and modify these. These are not the numbers we're coming to the towns tomorrow, next week, or 2 weeks from now to say, please consider approving these. Continue to be a working draft, still wanting input from folks that know more than we do about it. But we are relying on models that currently exist from other communities running public works.
On these, when we put this budget together, are you gonna have one for Damariscotta and one for Newcastle? Or
No.
we're gonna have.
No, it's a joint works committee, that's the point. What we have is
Cost
a
share.
cost share.
Not sure, right, so.
Yeah.
All right,
Break up, yeah.
so you're gonna have to some way figure out what the different costs are for each town.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier in the meeting.
And I'm sorry, I'm getting old and can't see, but where's the fuel budget?
Well, let me scroll through here, let's use the search key, but would encourage folks to take a look at the link in the interest of time, just to take a look at the link as it goes up. See, yeah, there's a lot of detail there that we can't get into absolutely every line item today. Depending on the level of service and what the town's gonna be providing, you know, for everything from just the downtown contract to the full premium level service, between 30 and 50 grand.
Is that for the year, my friend? Is that the whole year budget?
Yes.
Okay.
As again, this is the draft form that we have today at the moment.
That's gonna be
And
diesel instead of gas. Just saying.
Fuel. Gas.
We got gas up there, shouldn't?
So, again,
Can we just keep going?
It just says vehicle.
It's just fuel.
Just leave.
Yes, no, it's just put line for fuel.
And the best suggested way to provide feedback for you to adjust this is through the online or on that piece of paper?
At the moment, the way we're trying to structure this so the committee can get through its agenda and its meetings is if we have the ability within time, I mean, 7:30 is kind of the committee's agreed kind of cutoff for tonight. And so in an effort to try and get through it, trying to manage, like, if there are questions and such, suggestions, questions, concerns, you know, if we can't get to them in the meeting, encouraging folks to write them here. Certainly in between meetings, based on what you've heard, if others hear things like during and between meetings, reach out to Kevin or I. So we have the opportunity to try and prepare something for the meetings and put them in here to adjust things. This is a fluid, continuing to move thing until we come to the public with a presentation to present for consideration. So this meeting is a working one, and yes, some numbers might still change, but this is where we're at today based on what other towns are running. I mean, our footprint for mileage is certainly a little bit less than some others around us, certainly more than some around us. So trying to use a balance of what everyone else is seeing. Any,
Get to the bottom.
yeah, any questions?
Everyone wants to see the bottom.
Oh, sure.
And this is right now without, you're talking about building and things like that, and that can change with capital and.
Yeah, I mean, again, the capital one, we still need to work through and talk about. But as it's in here drafted, you know, that's what the different the service levels would be.
That's more than what we're paying now, and we're gonna get.
So this is
Any questions from the committee?
There is a chance we're gonna ask you to leave. Guys, we really need to get through this, guys. So if we get questions, we know how to do it. We need to get through our agenda. So.
And see, there's a significant variance. Again, we still need to work through the building stuff, but try to put a placeholder in for some of that. The building costs you see in the debt service down there would be based on again, whether you do a 10, 5, 20 year, I mean, that's some of the variability that would need to be worked out. In terms of what that annual impact would be. Don't remember off the top of my head what I put those in there at. If it's a simple 10-year potentially, or if it was 15, but.
Is your debt service at 167, is that what the capital facility that are?
That's based on assumption of what, a $3 million project, what did we come up with? That's below that, isn't it?
I think we put those in, my guess is it was like a simple 10-year. I can't remember now. We had a calculator that we were using from Maine Municipal Bond Bank. You can plug any number in there and you want to change the terms, and so it's until we're more clear and confident on what size sand structures, sand shed building do you want? Do you want to put 100% or 50% of material in there?
Yeah.
And, you know, again, the service level between those two was gonna depend on how much salt versus sand you do have stockpiled, if there's more salt priority versus not. I think the facility piece is probably one that devotes a little bit more attention and time specifically to it at another meeting. Just to help get a better parameter on this. Kevin was gonna try and work on already, the ability for the public to kind of change it. But what if we did it over a 15-year period or a 20-year period? Just take a little bit of effort to figure out the best way to make those more simple models for people, to try and see how that might adjust. Obviously, the longer the term, and higher the cost, the more interest you're gonna pay. $3 million over 10 years versus 20, still be more interest on 20. And so I think all of that is a substantial difference. So I think we still need the full picture of operating and then the detail on that. We've talked about equipment lists before, and that can be available as we've drafted it, under the different service levels. Where I've got it in here now is try to capture what the current contracts require. And then start to throw in ideas for what we would need to perform at the levels of service that we've been talking about. So this is something that we can look at. I don't think we have a hyperlink other than unless you link the whole sheet. It'll be available when we have a chance to put up there so you can all see what that looks like, but
Is that one total then?
So again, depending on the service level, and the equipment's needed for each of those, anywhere from, on the low end, 730, if that's a complete column, all the way up to 1.9 million in total costs for capital or just equipment, not building. Some of that includes some lease, some used, some new. You don't want everything all new in year one because in year, 5, all your small trucks will be probably replaced. In year 10, all your big trucks might be getting replaced. So trying to offset those to stagger them, so they're not all at once, down the road.
Yeah, so fire equipment,
Well,
Unless
that's-
it's shiny, then it all goes at once.
That's also where staggering the starting at a portion of.
Phased approach.
And a phased approach would make that a easier, more obvious.
Yeah.
Cause we're not gonna buy it all at once, we're
Yeah.
gonna, buy this now and that later and.
So we have a tentative cost sharing model right now, right? And more or less that we can work off for the shares of each town. Once we get a number here, whatever that might be, you can use those to see what each town would be liable for at that point. Yeah.
And I think going back to comparing where each town's at today with operating. The way you guys contract everything, it's potentially a little easier to look at summer versus winter maintenance.
Yeah.
For us, we're gonna have to kind of be a little more general with like, okay, we have 2 crew members, do you actually go through and count the days or just say, okay, generally speaking, 5 months of the year they're doing this type of work, 6 months, 7 months they're doing this type of work. So on our end, we're doing a little bit more in-house. That line starts to blur a little bit between those 2 tasks, but we can work to try and put that there to show what that looks like, and if it's how far apart may or may not agree. I think the capital certainly is very different.
Yeah.
You guys are upwards of what, 900,000, I think our capital this year was 150 for the road paving drainage line.
Not as much as that.
And we have a bond or debt service basically for some of the previous work that's been done, so if you add the 2 together, we're still a far cry. From that number. Relative to the road miles, look at that and how far off might that be? Not knowing some of your capital stuff, could be done in a more preventative maintenance. The tree trimming, the way that your structure is set up now is you come in saying, okay, we're gonna redo this section road, say it was a 3-year, 2-year, 3-year, whatever. The year before the paving, you're gonna do these types of tasks the next year and then pave. However, that exactly is set up, each road's a little bit different, but whereas some of that could potentially just be done as part of a routine summer work, over a longer period. 2 different ways of looking at doing it. At the end of the day, you still gotta maintain your culverts, still gotta maintain the clearance overhead, the width of the road, from working on crowding. So it's just a matter of when do you address it and how, the frequency you come back to it.
So Andy, right now, there's probably the pieces on this are really coming around like the buildings and things like that and where, you know, how we might face it in different phases at different levels. So that's really I would say the last piece of the puzzle, but there's much more than that in there, but that's what needs to, yeah. There's still quite a bit to work on.
Would it be helpful in terms of, just being able to look at, you know, a projection, 10 or 15-year projection of, okay, here's what Public Works Department might cost, here's what contracting might cost, especially with the phased approach where, and I don't, you're the magician here. I don't, you know, I'm not sure how you do it.
I'm the
but-
helper, he's the magician with the Excel, to the
But-
spreadsheets and formulas.
But if you could say, all right, so say, you know, we're gonna start with the downtown, 3 years. Year 3, we're gonna add this cost, and then in another 3 years, we're gonna say, be doing all of it by year 9. What those numbers would actually look like. I mean, it's a guess, but it might.
We've done, three of us have done the numbers work here. Now I can take this and turn it into the magic toggle switch to figure things out and see what it looks like.
Yeah, we just need the input on like, okay, is it year 3 or year 5 that you take that next step if you face it? And so I think that's where it gets so unique, particular, whatever. That you know, how do we create the tool best to simply change this form, you know, this input to this input?
Yeah.
So you can see those different things, I mean, versus having 20 different spreadsheets showing.
Right.
I mean, different scenarios. Yeah, so I mean, like, what I really like what Andy did here, you scroll around so you can see a little bit better about what you have up here. In this, right, in this tab, which I've now added to the
You
link.
wanna see what's in the sheet here or the tab?
Yeah, this tab, you're on this tab, go up.
Yeah.
So he's identified like the equipment that would be necessary, and he's even identified things that we would just buy used, search for and buy used.
Rent or
What, and some of it includes things we already have, so you can see currently owned. You know, estimated expense, so you kind of get an idea of, you know, this situation where, you know, that you can toggle those too. If you switch it to used and new, and I can set that up. So the public can even participate in trying to figure out how to make this potentially a cost-effective model. And it's the same with the facility. You know, we can either go after a giant grant and get a really $10 million project.
hall or,
Or you're starting off with a rented 2-bay garage and you're keeping some equipment in there and you're doing essentially what you're doing now, but hopefully we have some help too on our end. And you start small and build into it and we can show what that looks like.
And we haven't talked much as a committee, I don't think, about the possibilities of, you know, generally speaking, grant funding that could be available. When it comes to if we're gonna do this or not, and it makes good sense, I don't generally try and suggest that we rely and only do it if the grant's available. If this is truly a need and a desire, you know, we will work to get any grants that are.
Grant could be an offset.
But I would hate to share or present a number that says like, we're gonna get this grant, and then find we don't get it.
Right.
You know, so I mean, the full picture, right? Appreciate the full picture of what it could be.
Right.
And if we are successful in getting grants, great, we can adjust the numbers and the tax impact and burdens, and it'll be much less, but. I went and looked, I think in the last. 3, 4, 5, whatever it's been for the CDS and CPF projects. In Maine alone, I think there was like 5 or 6 public works endeavors that have been funded for new facilities. In part or whole. So I wanna dig in a little bit more of those communities and see like, you know, what percentage of that, was it all of it, was it part of it, was it just a rehab, you know, so one was just an assault building. One was for a whole facility and a set of equipment too, and so all I had was like the quick headline, I didn't get into the weeds on whatever they actually got covered, so. I just know that when you're regionalizing these types of things, that it's, you know, the funders really like that sense of efficiency that can be gained in 2 towns too, if what they'd otherwise be doing separately.
Right.
So you're better suited in this sense under this type of agreement, doing it together. But it's not guaranteed, so.
Do you have a sense of where it's going,
What's going?
the facility?
Not yet.
So is there a land cost proposed in your assessment?
In my, not for purchase at the moment, no.
No, the discussion earlier was about timeline. knowing of the community based on, finalized budget and the interlocal agreement presented to the towns to say, is this something you want to do?
Yeah.
And from there, it'd be another year or two before we say purchasing land. And it may be, if it's the phased in approach, it may be just renting a spot, renting a place to renting a building or putting up an initial building to phase in. So those are the scenarios that need to be
That
talked
needs to be
about.
reflected in the initial budget.
This
Yeah.
committee needs to meet one more or two more times before we take something to the select boards.
Yeah.
About that, and then from there, a decision about what to present to the public. But it isn't about what land, where, and what building, it's, do we wanna have an interlocal agreement, right?
The only reason I was asking was for your cost to be represented in your budget to be true.
Yeah, and that's where I think the toggling that I'm gonna work on next is the focus is. You toggle this out to be something we do in 3 years from now, I need to factor in inflation. And we need to factor in, is it with a building or without a building that year, a lease or not a lease, so on and so forth. So I think those are the pieces I still need this committee to help figure out. But, time's a wasted.
Right. Do we wanna try and set a date tonight, for the next meeting while we're all sitting
Yeah,
down?
let's put it on the books.
Not a month away.
No,
No, we should do it
a week or two.
sooner, sooner.
It's already January.
Gonna aim for the last week in January.
Next week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It feels like it.
We talk, you do another Monday, the 26th, or is that?
You guys meet,
It's fine.
I know we were doing some Mondays there, so. Whatever.
you're second and fourth, right?
I'll enjoy my son when
We are.
he's older.
So you're the 26th.
Yeah,
Would be of that week, the 26th would be your next.
We have a select board meeting on the 26th.
So not that. okay.
Please don't do it that night.
So that leaves
Tuesday,
Wednesday, Thursday.
do it Tuesday then? This Tuesday?
Tuesday needs to be here because my fire chief has trainings on Tuesdays.
That agreeable,
So Tuesday, the 27th?
27th?
do another back-to-back, have them,
Kevin, do anything?
let's do it. Why not?
Let's do it.
Kids don't need
Well,
me.
As long as you fed them, right?
Yeah.
They're fed.
I left
27th
dinner on the
here.
table.
Did you have something else on the 27th?
No, we just have our select board meeting the night before.
Oh, the night before, oh.
He's not so used to these night meetings.
I do 2 a month.
I do at least 2 a week.
Make that work.
Okay,
So 27th,
27th,
again at 6.
6 o'clock,
And I'll be here again.
Okay,
okay.
We do Tuesday.
yeah, if that's gonna give you guys enough time to pull together what you need, yeah. You don't need to sleep.
Or see his son, or see his son.
Hang out with our kids when they're older.
I know.
Can I make a comment before we get done?
Turn to the chair.
That's the chair over here, he's gonna,
He's the committee have the ability to.
People are writing up there if you wanna make a comment.
No, this is, what there's a lot of us here, and, it'd be nice to hear other people's thoughts. I've heard some negative tonight, and I think we need to allow people to express their opinion of the positives. And I haven't seen much of that tonight, so I guess, I know you wanna keep your meetings short, but I hope you want the public's input and, maybe we can, limit how long you have to speak or whatever, but allow people to, cause, I've heard more negative than positive than me, and I think we should be allowed to express our opinions too.
Thank you.
Okay?
Do you wanna hear him?
It's up to the committee if you wanna continue to stay.
Well, I think the way, difference too with the meetings, like when we have a working committee meeting. With an agenda to get through, it's difficult
Yeah,
to get through with that, and that's fine, so. The idea would be where we set some ground rules for this one where there's loss of opportunity between the next one to either reach out through, we've got the old school whiteboard up there. And obviously email me, but the idea would be that once this kind of gets to a point, we can say, hey, now we have a public meeting, like we have, because a lot of these questions that are coming up now. They're gonna be the same ones coming up in a public meeting, and knowing those, we can work on that and then come say, hey, this is the package that's presented. What do you guys think? And have more of a robust public meeting at that point, as opposed to a working group, working committee.
My
Makes sense.
comments is just, about expressing how I feel about this and like I said, I think there's a lot of positives to this and I don't hear them, and I think we need that side as well as the other side. And so I guess and it's not really questions, it's more about the comments
No
about
comments, but yeah.
the program and what it looks like and how you feel about that, because
Those are also valuable for the collection for this information. They're valuable to be put on the list so we can. Really what we're trying to do is gather input. Both from the committee and generally the public about things that we need to address if we're gonna present something to the select boards. So that's our mission, is to draft something for them to consider. Looking at the cost.
Yeah.
And looking at what that interlocal agreement was. That really was the charge.
Yeah.
And then for the boards to make a decision about what to do and hear more public comment about pros and cons of what we've developed. But I'd like to button it up based on input that members of the communities here have this way. So we have time to then take those questions and incorporate that. So we had quite a few comments at the last one we had. We weren't able to get through our agenda. That's why I'm trying to shift this to, look, we need to try to get our things done, but we do want your input. Just not necessarily while we're trying to go through the work we have.
right.
I just suggest as we continue to have these working committee meetings, like invite one more person with you. Right, and so there's one more person then hearing it. Yes, it'll be available after the fact, if those that wanna go do that, and watch it after the fact, but more coming. This is the biggest turnout I think we've had so far, and it's great. So as we continue to work through, I think for those that have seen the working process, it just, you understand it a little bit differently. And so everyone else, when they come to that next first public meeting, it's all gonna be fresh for them. And so I think having more and more people attend these is great. But we still need to be able, as the working meeting, get through the items so we can get closer to that public meeting to share all of that, in a more polished, finished form, for consideration.
But Andy, excuse me, Kevin, this is the second meeting that I've been to every meeting you've had or watched on TV, and I agree with Roger, the comments that the public makes should have a lot of value in what you do. But this is the second meeting I've heard you say, well, we don't want to take comments right now, we don't want to take questions right now. I left the first meeting because I was basically told, we're not taking questions right now. But I think if you're gonna ask for public input and you want us to come, you ought to be able to listen to us talk, or listen to our comments. So I agree with Roger that comments should be allowed to be made. And telling people to stop because they're upset, Kevin, that's not very cool either. The taxes, people are upset in these communities on our tax rate, and this is a huge project. The biggest one that Damariscotta or Newcastle has tackled since Great Salt Bay was built, I believe. Wouldn't I be pretty close on that? Daryl?
Yeah, I would think so.
So it's a lot of money, and you're throwing around figures that aren't accurate sometimes. And so the public comment I think the public does have a right to express their opinion or their comments about what you're doing. So don't sit there and say, well, we want your comments, but then not let us in, not want to hear it.
But when we're not ready to give you
Well, then don't
an
ask for,
answer,
then don't tell us you're glad you're here to hear our comments. You don't want to hear our comments, man.
well,
I'll just say thank you for the perspective, and I'll let up to the committee to decide if you want to adjourn at this point. I appreciate everyone coming tonight, and continue to have that dialogue with us, via after the fact. I know folks have done that before, but right, any more questions you might have that we want to have the committee look at? With that, anyone want to have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn? Second. Any other discussion, all in favor? Great, thank you all.
Kevin, where's that?
Is that meeting notes?
Thank you, Ron.
It's on Damariscotta's site. I think what we were putting our all this stuff on there.
Yes.
There's something in there. My money. No doubt, no doubt.
And we don't want that.
Yeah, right in between us.
Yeah.